robot dogs,
I'm setting the temperature on the driver's side to 72 degrees.
driverless vehicles,
Okay.
digital humans, artificial intelligence, getting the job done. So where are we headed? You might say we're already there. This is AI All In.
Hello, I'm Lori Stokes. Artificial intelligence is a technology that allows machines to imitate the human brain. It's a system that perceives its environment and then takes action to achieve its goal. Over the next half hour, we're giving you a glimpse into the future of AI. But before we see where we're going, a look at where we are now.
How can I help?
Set driver's side temperature to 72 degrees.
I'm setting the temperature on the driver's side to 72 degrees.
Artificial intelligence has become so prevalent in our everyday lives that we sometimes forget it's there. But in 2021, AI created a masterpiece.
When did Beethoven die?
Beethoven died on March 26, 1827.
Beethoven's unfinished symphony is now finished, despite him being long dead, not because of another composer, but because of artificial intelligence. A team of researchers, led by a Rutgers professor, taught a machine Beethoven's entire body of work. The machine then uses that knowledge to think like Beethoven himself and complete the masterwork.
Learn lots and lots, millions of notes by Beethoven himself until it can perfect composing like Beethoven, orchestrating like Beethoven, harmonizing like Beethoven.
That is just one of the advancements in AI we saw in 2021. By year's end, Apple was making headlines, getting into the driverless car game. In California, one company already started using self-driving vehicles to deliver groceries. Another company is thinking even bigger. Too Simple is getting ready to deploy fleets of self-driving big rigs. Yes, self-driving big rigs.
We will not deploy autonomous trucking until it is at or above human standards, and it will be a safe product.
From roads to construction sites, in 2021, artificial intelligence is manning the controls of dump trucks and bulldozers. Meanwhile, here in the city, four-legged AI was making headlines.
It scared me. I can't believe what I'm seeing. It felt surreal.
The NYPD used a robotic dog during a domestic dispute at a Kips Bay NYCHA building this past April. The move, highly controversial. Some thought it undermined police-community relations.
They deserve policing that is humane and human.
And if there are AI dogs, then of course there are AI humans. Chatbots and digital humans are taking over customer service roles.
Hello, I'm Mia, your welcome wagon to all things Portico Kirby. I should tell you that I was only just born a few days ago.
Take Mia, for example. She works with a Texas-based real estate company, and her job is to answer questions and provide information to potential buyers. But Mia can do much more.
And the really cool thing about Mia, if you turn your camera on, she's watching you. So if you smile at her, she smiles back.
AI already behind real-life medical breakthroughs. Researchers at Tulane recently discovered AI can accurately detect and diagnose colorectal cancer.
We can use a small amount of pathologist labeled data and then use large amounts of other unlabeled data to train a highly accurate AI system.
One of the places where it really is going to have the biggest impact is in finding cures for diseases, because the ability for artificial intelligence and machine learning to go through all of this data far outstrips what humans can do. And it far outstrips what they can learn about the data. And so I think that is accelerating some of the treatments we're seeing.
Such developments beg the question, are machines going to take our jobs away? AI companies say no.
We see jobs being increased. There's a number of things that are involved in operating this technology that will increase employment opportunities.
Personally, do I believe that machines will become our overlords and our masters? No, look, I don't.
As for what we can expect in 2022,
the question is not how far AI can go, but how do we manage the growth of AI?
With new technology comes new concerns. Can artificial intelligence violate a person's human rights? Chris Welsh reports on how some world leaders are sounding the alarm.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
I'm a boy.
You are a real boy.
Everything I knew about artificial intelligence sort of came through the imagination of Stanley Kubrick or Steven Spielberg.
That is, until Shalini Kantaya saw this TED Talk from an MIT researcher.
Algorithmic bias, like human bias, results in unfairness.
It inspired Kantaya, a filmmaker and a director, to put together Coded Bias, a documentary viewable on Netflix that explores the inherent biases in facial recognition.
I got computer vision software that was supposed to track my face.
That's MIT researcher Joy Bellamwini.
It didn't work that well until I put on this white mask. When I put on the white mask, detected. I take off the white mask, not so much.
The computer system recognizes the white mask as a human being and doesn't recognize Joy's face as a human being.
The problem is the data the software relies on is data from the past, a past ridden with historical injustices and inequalities.
These data sets were predominantly white, predominantly male, predominantly middle-aged. And so even sometimes in spite of the best intentions of the programmers, these injustices, these systems can replicate historic inequalities.
There's growing consensus from those who study AI, like Associate Director of Harvard's Cyber Law Clinic, Jessica Fjeld, that this technology could significantly curtail human rights. Take, for example, the issue of biometric surveillance, cameras that scan the faces of everyone who walks down a public sidewalk 24/7.
Imagine that we put a literal police officer at every corner. That would make it easier to catch the bad guy, quote unquote, right? Having them there all the time would really change the experience of walking down a street in New York City, right? If every time you cross a corner, you're also, waving nervously at the cop.
But the United Nations is now calling for a moratorium on that type of AI surveillance.
My statement this morning will update the Council.
In a September report, the UN's High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, demanded, quote, urgent action. She said we can't afford to continue playing catch-up regarding AI. Her report urges companies and countries to hit the pause button altogether on the rollout of new AI technologies until the systems are properly tested and assurances regarding human rights are provided. Now, remember that software that wouldn't recognize Joy Bellamwini's face until she put on that white face mask?
What is so shocking and alarming about this is that this was not a technology that was being beta tested on a shelf somewhere.
Kantaya says it was already actively being sold to both federal and local law enforcement agencies across the U.S.
With no one that we elected, no one that represents we the people giving any kind of oversight.
But in terms of that oversight, many experts believe it is coming. In fact, in April, the European Union proposed what's called the Artificial Intelligence Act, a legal framework, in a sense, says the EU's digital affairs spokesperson, Johannes Barkey.
Consumers need to be sure that AI is checked, if it's risky, checked as thoroughly as any other technology before they are confronted to it.
If passed, it could set global standards on AI regulation. But in the absence of legislation here at home, will Silicon Valley actually heed the UN's warning and go through the proper checks before new software rolls out?
That's a big ask for some of these big tech companies.
Certainly it is.
That's why some experts believe the era of simply asking nicely needs to come to an end now.
Coming up, it's a dirty job, so why not let robots do it? But first, an education evolution, how AI could be transforming the classroom.
The pandemic brought dramatic changes to education. American children learning from home and getting quite used to technology. But what if schools didn't need teachers anymore, or at least human ones? Dana Arshan has that story.
I'm ready to go.
This could be a glimpse into the future of our classrooms.
When I make the connections with the students, then they are more comfortable in discussing things. They are more open.
Human connections that are being enhanced by artificial intelligence. Although it's in the early stages, some schools around the country are now incorporating AI into the curriculum. There are different programs out there, but they operate on the same principle, and that's students learn while interacting.
I'm sorry, say it again.
That means how often a student is speaking and how engaged they are. The artificial intelligence is an additional set of eyes and ears on the class. The goal is to point out the students who, for whatever reason, are not as involved as others.
We think that'll be an incredible assistance to the teacher just to track what's going on.
One of the programs out there is TeachFX.
That's kind of what we've been developing over the last several years is technology that can really parse the very messy audio of a classroom environment.
TeachFX is an app for teachers that actually measures student engagement. This is done by providing data on how often a student would interact and what questions prompted that interaction.
That gives me a snapshot of the class. You know, how much did I talk? How much did the students talk?
TeachFX has already made its way into classrooms, and another program will soon make its way to schools.
Put the blue block on the green block.
Okay.
Meet Diana.
Doesn't have a virtual presence except maybe kind of an iPad face that has eyes that kind of show that it knows who's talking.
Diana is the brainchild of scientists from Colorado State and Brandeis Universities. It can listen to a command and take action.
What we've focused on in the Diana system is to try to create an environment that is a 3D simulation of a human and a computer or a synthetic robot interacting with one another. It's done by recreating my environment through multiple cameras, and she is able to see my face, so my countenance.
The next step in the evolution of AI in the classroom is interacting with students.
The next phase of that would be to do the little bit of nudging, to say, can you tell me more about that?
Both TeachFX and Diana have a common goal, making sure the voices of all students are heard and the teacher's message is getting through to everyone in the classroom.
Trying to close the opportunity gap between students of color, different ethnicities, even gender.
Up next, a medical breakthrough, how AI could help create human life. Imagine turning to AI to help you start a human family. Some local doctors are taking a good look at how AI can boost the success rate of IVF. Teresa Priolo explains.
For couples all over the world, the marriage of man and medicine is their greatest and for some only hope of achieving the dream of parenthood biologically. It's a mission doctors Zev Rosenwachs and Nikita Zananovich at the Cohen-Perlman Center for Reproductive Medicine at Weill Cornell have devoted their entire lives to.
The process of IVF, it's over 30 years old. So basically what we do, we join eggs and sperm in vitro outside of the body, and we put them in the conditions that are mimicking conditions in the human body.
Between 1987 and 2015, 1 million babies were born in the U.S. through assisted reproductive therapies. The most common therapy, in vitro fertilization. That is, retrieving a woman's eggs fertilizing them outside the uterus in a glass petri dish, allowing the embryo to mature, and then reinserting it in the hopes that the pregnancy will take. It's a process that is subject to the whims of the body, impeccable timing, skilled scientists, and the mother's maternal age.
With IVF, you could say that the chances are almost 2 to 3 times what they are with natural reproduction at every age.
The business of reproductive medicine hinges on the conception success rate. At Cornell, their rate is roughly 81%.
It's very demanding emotionally, physically, and financially on the couple.
Which is why the introduction of technology like artificial intelligence could truly be a game changer.
We use the ability of an educated computer, and the computer is often educated by man, to look at specific characteristics that we as humans may not be able to see with the human eye.
So for example, I will look at the embryos and I will say, okay, 1 or 2 of them are, I think, the best. And then I will ask computer to do the same. And I will try to compare if we are actually, did we agree or not agree.
The hope is that we can teach the computer and that it can also analyze the embryo in such a way that without having the intervariation of human observation, that computer is able to do it time and time again in a consistent manner and tell us which embryo is the one that's most likely to implant and result in a single pregnancy, thus also avoiding the risk of multiple pregnancy.
Up next.
It's a pretty unpleasant job, to be honest. It's really hard.
So why not let the robots just do it? Recycling is a simple thing we all do to help protect the environment. But it's also a big business. The industry is seeing dramatic changes, all powered by artificial intelligence. Stacey Delicat has an inside look.
This is called the Cortex. It's made by a company called Amp Robotics, whose goal is to improve how all that stuff we throw into our recycle bins gets sorted and ultimately sent off for a second or third life.
For the first time, you can have these systems able to identify things out in the real world with pretty much the same levels of performance as a person.
Historically, people have stood along conveyor belts in recycling plants, separating our cans from our cartons and pulling out stuff that never should have been tossed in the blue bin to begin with.
It's a pretty unpleasant job, to be honest. It's really hard.
That's where the robot comes in.
It's learned to look for things like logos, different textures, different shapes. This is a lot of the same technology that's being used in autonomous cars, some stuff with drones, facial recognition.
It comes at a time when the recycling industry as a whole has undergone a reckoning after China stopped buying most recycled materials from the U.S. 2 years ago because of new purity standards. Many municipalities and private haulers saw recyclables pile up with no market to sell them to. AMP's CEO, Dr. Matanya Horowitz, says this technology has helped.
We can help these facilities actually produce higher quality stuff.
AMP's robots have fanned out across the world and are in about 40 different recycling facilities across the country, including one in Jersey City, New Jersey.
It's definitely becoming more prevalent.
Megan Smalley is the managing editor of the trade publication Recycling Today and has seen more and more recycling or material recovery facilities adopt artificial intelligence.
A lot of, recyclers and the manufacturers both attest that it does help with staff shortages. Robots can pick, just as fast as human sorters, if not faster.
But the model of bringing in more robots to a facility begs the question.
There's always going to be the argument that robots are taking jobs away from people. So is that the case here?
I would be pretty confident that our robots haven't taken any jobs, even though we're sort of getting wider and wider deployments. The issue is that so many of these facilities are run understaffed to begin with. They're just saying, hey, I'm just so grateful that I can fully staff my facility.
The technology comes at a cost, averaging around $6,000 to $7,000 a month to lease, according to Horowitz. Part of the reason why the robots are still not widespread in the recycling world.
They're talking about this technology, I wouldn't say the majority have applied this technology yet, though. Part of that's the cost. Part of it's not a solution that fits every single recycling facility.
Whether it's recycling robots or those robot dogs,
AI is not perfect, but neither are humans. All this technology is still a work in progress, just like us. So who really knows what's in store for 2022? Until next time, I'm Lori Stokes.